from SDS Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas for Was It Really That Good? With my co-host, Gene Jackson. Gene, can you actually believe I said it right the first time?
That's amazing. I'm impressed.
How's everything
be a good
going
show,
with
buddy.
you there in Alabama?
Oh, it's just wonderful. I'm here confined to the home with my two cats, as we were just talking about before we went on there. Rosie's working out of town, and we have been watching a lot of wrestling, including today's St. Louis wrestling that we're going to talk about.
All right, exciting, and I do apologize for that one. There's 10 of these shows. I'll put it up on Twitter. I'll put this show that we're reviewing up on Twitter. There are 10 shows up there of St. Louis wrestling, and I sent you a message. I was like, man, this is St. Louis wrestling, blah, blah, blah. I picked the wrong one. I'm thinking that about halfway through, and I'm already halfway through, so I'm thinking to myself, I can't sit through another hour, plus this hour, plus this, and I said, I'm just going to go with it. So this was a tribute show, kind of clips for Sam Mushnick. Now, I'm going to mess his name up probably 100 times, but I think I got it right that time.
You did. Good job. With Larry Matisic as the announcer, and then Joe Garagiola as the referee. You talking about a bunch of crazy names to have to say. God.
Man, Larry had a good reputation, too, of helping book and everything, and was always friends with everybody. I mean, he would be friends with you, kayfabe sheets, you call it, you name it, he was gonna be your buddy, and really friendly to the fans. I've heard all kinds of good stuff about him. Sam, I didn't know much about him. I didn't know much about St. Louis. I started trading tapes, and there was a series of tapes where we would kind of get the Ric Flair matches from St. Louis. We try to get those because he would wrestle guys like David Von Erich, Bruiser Brody, Dusty Rhodes, Harley Race, you name it. And that was kind of like, let's get the Ric Flair and see the difference. But you could see, he was doing some of the matches, but these matches were all different that we seen Flair in.
We haven't talked about this since you told me this is what we were watching. But, at one time when I was deep in the DVD trading by that point, I had the whole series of the classic St. Louis wrestling that they had put out through High Spots. So I've seen all the DVDs, and yeah, this isn't the best of the bunch, to say the least. But another thing I used to do on the Wrestling Classics board, I used to participate in the Virtual Wrestling board, which is basically what they call a wrestling fantasy league, but it doesn't really work like baseball. It's basically like you just write shows and stuff. So anyway, when I got on there, I was assigned St. Louis. So I did a lot of studying on St. Louis and, Mushnick and that's why I got all those DVDs and watched all these shows. So Wrestling at the Chase, it's kind of interesting, having a weekly wrestling television show in a hotel in downtown St. Louis there. And of course they had all the big matches there at the Checker Dome. But man, like you said, there was a lot of people from throughout the NWA would come to St. Louis and wrestle on these television shows and at the Checker Dome shows. And Ric Flair had a lot of interesting title defenses there. And of course, there were some title changes there and whatnot. But like I said, the Von Erichs would show up there, and just guys from across the NWA would wrestle there. St. Louis kind of served as a showcase for the NWA at that point.
This reminded me a lot of what they did in Houston with Bosch. They would have different people, and he didn't really care where you wrestled at. He kind of wanted to see somebody. He wanted to see Backlund. He wanted to see Race. And I think he wanted to. He knew the fans wanted to see people like that they'd never seen before. And I seen something with Bruce Pritchard talking about bringing in Bruno. And me and you've talked about Bruno a couple of times, but in a setting like Houston, Texas, Bruno wasn't a big deal. Right. And so that was the thing with St. Louis is by what I know about it is that they expected a really good main event. So they always had really good people in a good work rate there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it worked, and I guess it'd been pretty fun to be a fan there at the time because it's not like there was really a stale, ongoing St. Louis roster, at least not in the main event. You always had somebody interesting, somebody that up to that point you probably only had seen in magazines. They're wrestling, on a frequent basis. It's always changing instead of just your usual territory where it's the top star against, whoever week in and week out. So I don't know. I think St. Louis would have been a cool spot to be in back in the day to be there at the Chase and at the Checker Dome for all these people that Mushnick brought in.
I agree. I mean, that would have been, if you were in that town, you could see why people were going. We start out with clips of, they're just talking about the build-up for Flair against Dusty again. Race against Dusty. Dusty beats Race for the belt. And the finish on these matches were just really different. I mean, just no big deal kind of thing,
That's what really stood out to me about it. And, I hate to be negative, but, like, compared to growing up on like Memphis and Continental and even like Jim Crockett and stuff like that, like it really was kind of like boring and like you say, it's kind of a lot of the finishes were just so anticlimactic. Like they just kind of come out of nowhere in some spots, and that was really my biggest takeaway from it. Is like they really didn't do very many hot finishes or anything very exciting. I mean, even that. Not to jump ahead, but even like the 2 out of 3 falls with Flair and Dusty, the finish is just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, well, we didn't just see clips, but Dusty he just did a roll up with Race, and then Flair beat Dusty off of what was it? Flying press, maybe that was it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, he come off the road. Well, I mean, it was psychology wise, it made sense. Flair had been working over the leg, of course, figure four and such. Dusty shoots him off and catches him for what looks like it's going to be a body slam, but Dusty's leg gives out, goes down 1, 2, 3. And
then that sets up, Flair's got the belt, Dusty's chasing again, and that's going to be a main event, which we don't get to till later, like you said. We did get I don't know about you, but I totally enjoyed Roy Rogers against Ric Flair. I don't know. I think maybe because I'm thinking of Roy as, he turned out to be one of the riches, and I always thought he was a solid guy. But, man, him and Flair had a decent match.
Well, that's what Flair's always been known for, is going in and having great matches with preliminary guys. I mean, at that point, Roy Rogers – soon to be Johnny Rich, that's what he was. And people have debated over the years whether that was a good thing or not, because you would watch, say, for instance, Jim Crockett, George South would just get pummeled week in and week out by everybody from the Road Warriors down to Shaska Watley. And then Ric Flair would go out there and have a competitive, 8-minute match with him. For at one point, you're like, holy shit, George South's going to beat Ric Flair. And then Flair, of course, would beat him. Which made made George South look like $1 million. And then, like you say, in this case, Roy Rogers looked competitive with Flair. But on the other side of that, you had a lot of wrestlers and smart fans go, well, that means the world champion can't just go in and easily take care of the guy that, last week Nelson Royal beat in 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes or whatever. So, I mean, There's two sides of that coin, but yeah, I guess this was before Roy Rogers realized he was related to Tommy Rich.
I would love to get him on the show to talk about that, to talk about him working. How do you? That was my deal, because there's a lot of young guys here, and how do you get the call? Hey, you want to go up to St. Louis to do the jobs, blah blah blah, or do you send your stuff? Because Roy was a good looking kid. I could see them putting him over in the future, but Flair, you could see Flair talking him through it too. I love that stuff. I love looking at Flair go, okay, fight back. You could see him going, fight back, fight back. But it was just a typical, psychology where he got some offense, he cut him off, that's just basic psychology, but I had a fun time with it. Then we had a Flair interview, which was the usual interview. I had a fun time with, I always have with Ric Flair interviews. We had a Dusty interview that I thought was subpar to Dusty. I didn't think it was that big a deal for such a big match.
I agree. Well, when Dusty popped up on the screen, I'm like, all right, here we go. This is going to be good. And then Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I was like, wow, that wasn't, yeah, that wasn't what I hoped for. But I don't know. Maybe he didn't feel well that day or something. But
Dusty had a cowboy hat on with sunglasses, so I don't know. I know Dusty's friends drink a lot. I don't know. I've never heard Dusty was Dick Murdoch was one of his buddies and some of the other people. So maybe he was hungover. Mike, one of the things he says is he's going to make it special for my mama, and all I could think of was Dusty. He loved his mama like me and like Mr. T. That's all I can think about.
I was so hoping that you were going to pick up on that because as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, well, there's our hook for the Dusty promo right there.
Yeah, I was thinking Dusty, he would come back backstage after that interview, and here I am booking. I was, man, what the fuck was that about? Go back out there and shoot that interview again. That was horrible, But I don't think people did that to Dusty even at this level, He had a little bit of power, so no one was going to tell him that was a shitty interview. I could just see me getting slapped for that one, Hey, dude, go back out there. We need you to cut that again and take
don't steal my mama line.
Sunglasses off. And don't
I'm the
mention
one who
your
loves my mama. Damn it! Don't be saying that.
All right, we're gonna take a quick commercial. We'll be right back. Remember, guys, you can do without a lot of stuff, but you can't do without Spunk Lube during these times of need. So remember that. We had Ken Patera, Crusher Blackwell against Bruce Reed, which eventually became Butch Reed, and Spike Huber. What do you think about all these guys? Instead of us talking about the match, what'd you come out of with Ken Patera, Crusher Black, all four of these characters? What did you think about them?
It's okay. First and foremost, it's really weird to hear him called Bruce Reed. I mean, I was aware that he used to go by Bruce Reed, but it's still every time they said it, it was weird. But I was always a fan of Ken Patera. I don't know why. When you go back and kind of watch him now, it's like, yeah. But blonde-headed heel Ken Patera, I enjoyed. Which most of that that's been in tape trading and after the fact. I really didn't see him, and by the time I was aware of him, he was in prison. So I enjoyed seeing him. Butch Reed, of course. I loved him in Mid-South. Wasn't a fan of the natural in WWF with the blonde hair, and I did like Doom, but I thought his best days obviously were in Mid-South for Watts.
Me too. Yeah. Good stuff.
Spike Huber, I remember popping up in like USWA in the '90s, looking like a completely different and wrestling like a completely different person. That was my only real.
Yeah, Spike liked the juice, so he was like a little bodybuilder kind of. I don't know. He was huge at one time, but still short. He was like a good hand. That's what I would say about him. Crusher Blackwell, the thing about him to me was that we always talked about this back in the day, but he's really fast for his size. He is just a big guy that does shit he shouldn't be doing kind of thing.
He is, but I tell you, one of my friends when I was a kid, his dad looked just like Crusher Blackwell. He had the big beard and the hair, and he was that big. He was a big guy. I don't think he moved quite as swiftly as Jerry Blackwell, but I could never get over that. Like every time I would, see him on, like when I saw him, it was mostly on the AWA when he was, oddly a baby face and on the downwards, slide of his career. But I couldn't get past like, wow, Jason's dad's wrestling, like that's all I ever saw in him. But a decent match.
Yeah, Patera to me, you was talking about Patera. Patera was an athlete to me. That was the main thing that had come across, and he looked like it to me, and I think that's why they pushed him. He always sold well, when he was in Memphis. Like, I remember some stuff with Lawler, he would sell real well. But, I could see why they was pushing him as a star. But he did, get pissed off because they didn't put mayonnaise on his hamburger. And him and Saito actually tore up a McDonald's. So, if they would have just put that mayonnaise on there, it would have been good to go. Bruiser,
one time my dad ordered his fish fillet without tartar sauce, and the same thing nearly happened when I was 5 years old.
We had a save with Dick the Bruiser. All right, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you. Now, what they're gonna say to us is that Dick the Bruiser was on his last legs here anyway. We didn't see
No
Dick
shit.
the Bruiser in his prime. Let me say that. But what was your thoughts on Dick the Bruiser?
So, being the age I am, my first exposure to Dick the Bruiser before going back and tape trading and seeing all this is when he was the special referee for Sting and the Black Scorpion at Starrcade 90, and he come out in that god-awful blue and white striped outfit, and Paul E. Dangerously on commentary called him Popeye the Sailor Man, and that's what he looked like. So that was my first impression of the great Dick the Bruiser. Going back and watching him on here, yes, he was definitely on his last legs. Ken Patera basically had to beat himself by hitting the turnbuckle pad, and it coming back, the chair hit him in the face, and then Dick the Bruiser covers him for the pin, because I guess they couldn't figure out any other finish that would seem feasible that Dick the Bruiser could beat freaking Ken Patera.
Right. He had to fuck himself. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's
Patera
that's
had to beat
normal.
himself.
That's normal. Yeah.
But stuff like this is what makes me sad. That guys like Flair and Harley and some of the guys that stuck around way past their prime, because that is the only Dick the Bruiser I know. I mean, I'm sure I could dig back and go find footage of when he was a great. I know he was never goddamn Dean Malenko or anything wrestling wise, but I mean, that to me, the broken down old man in there who looks like he shouldn't be in the ring anymore, who can barely move around. That's who I think of when I think of Dick the Bruiser. And I always think there's people way younger than us who only know the Ric Flair who wrestled in a T-shirt on the last Nitro.
Right.
Out there, elbow, knee dropping his fucking jacket and all that weird shit that he did.
Well, I think that messed me up a little bit about Flair, because I had all the crying and all that recently, like last probably 10 years, I've kind of soured on Flair and said, oh, I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him. But when we go back and look at this, we were talking about him against Nikita, and now we're talking about him against guys like Flair was, he may have been just as good as they said he was. I mean, he really was good. He was.
Good. He should have bowed out long before he did. And of course, all the dumbassery that he's pulled outside the ring, and the fact that he squandered all his money away and had 10 wives, as many wives as he had world championships, and all that, it doesn't help his image either. But, like I say, some guys, I wish they had bowed out before they did, so that they didn't ruin their legacy. Because I think a lot of people at the end of the day is going to remember the Ric Flair we've seen in recent years, and not the one that you see when you go back and watch the stuff from the 80s and even the early 90s. Because Royal Rumble 92 is forever going to be my favorite Royal Rumble, and I think it was the high point of Ric Flair's career to some degree. And boy, when you compare it to him and Hogan trying to wrestle in TNA and clearly blading right in front of the camera, and some of the shit that went on after
they
the retirement.
blade? What? Oh.
Yes, good Lord, it was like a damn. It was like an expose on blading right there on fucking TNA.
Here's the thing, and I don't know if you said Dick the Bruiser at the last. Bruiser, Crusher, Bruno. Not Crusher Blackwell. But those three guys, I just don't get. I mean, they were over like Rover, man, like a bologna sandwich in Ethiopia. Oh, my God.
Well, now you're going to get kicked off your own podcast.
Yeah. Did you just kick me off? I'm sorry. But he was. They were so over. They were, but I think it was, I just don't know. Maybe it was a style of Memphis that we were used to. But I also know, you're talking about them taking so long. That's what really killed Memphis, and that's what really killed these territories also, is that they wouldn't quit pushing all these old guys.
Yeah.
Instead of, the last person they put over in Memphis after Hart left was maybe Jarrett and Christopher. That was the only two that they put over. So that tells you how, and I think that's the same thing happened in these other territories. You didn't have anybody, and there's, they're old guys in this. Dick the Bruiser was the old guy. I never liked his interviews. I don't know.
No.
I just never see how he was over, and I think maybe I go back and look at these guys. I liked bumping. I like to watch guys bump like crazy, like Eddie Gilbert and people like that. And I think that's one of the parts with these guys. They take a beating, but it's a different way. It's like they're so slow, and I don't know. Never over with me. Crusher, Bruiser, and Bruno, not over with me. I know that. I know that will piss people off. Yeah, right.
Which they should be my fucking heroes because I'm slow and don't bump. So I mean, I should be like, oh yeah, man, the Crusher's my hero.
Yeah, there you go. I
patterned my whole life after him.
I do that 3-stage bump. I used to do where they would punch me, and then I'd grab the top rope, and then I would stagger a little bit, grab the middle rope, and then go ahead and fall. So that's that helped my back.
I won the OWO heavyweight title at the end of February against Tony Dabbs in my hometown, and we both took one bump apiece in that match.
Right on.
And the crowd was fucking over the moon because their hometown hero came back and won the championship right there in good old Aberdeen. It was amazing. Let's hope it never gets released on video though.
The last match, I think the last match I had was it was me and Golden Boy against Christian Jacobs, and I got more offense in that match, and I think they just let me get all kinds of punches and everything, and then I took a kick from Christian Jacobs, and I sold it like a mile before it got to me. It's like I was so scared of that fucking foot hitting me in the face, and that's the only bump I did, and it looked like shit. So, all right, so all the way through this, we're man, there is just so much shit on this. If you watch this video, fast forward, Mushnick he's got all these awards and all these people. I seen Bill Apter. I don't know who all these fucking people were. I know he was a big deal, but I could care less.
Yeah, so this DVD got made about 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was. And so a lot of this was Larry Madison going back talking over all this, and they edited all this shit together. So, I know there was like a senator that came in and then like a member of the House of Representatives or something. And then I started fast forwarding because then it was like, it's the sports guy from WTTT, Channel 5. And by the end of it, it's the manager of Arby's on Fifth Avenue. And it's like, Jesus Christ, you just paraded 45 people through this ring. This crowd's having to sit there and watch it. And that's bad enough because they were sitting there back in whatever year this was in St. Louis. But I'm sitting in my goddamn house watching YouTube. Why the fuck do they think I care about watching him shake hands with 45 people who I have no clue who they are?
Didn't they do it? Yeah, they did it twice, didn't they? Once in the ring, and then they did it. At the arena. I don't know, man.
Here's the private after party that's never been seen before, and it's the same shit. I'm like, well, I know why it's never been seen because nobody cares to fucking see it. Why, Jesus?
Sorry,
I don't mean to turn into Fournette cussing and all that.
Yeah. What pissed me off majorly was that you had a show like this, Mushnick's farewell show, but you had Gene. I think maybe you could have videotaped it. You could have been a cameraman and done 10 times a better job. I'm like, really? You're going to do raw footage, one camera? What the fuck is all this about?
Yeah.
And there was a ton of people on that show, and there's kind of things like David Von Erich gets raced that I would have liked. I like to see that whole match because David was good, but probably the best Von Erich. I know Kerry's my favorite, but David was probably. But you can also see like so much greenness in just those small clips. It's like Race is walking him through everything. I mean everything that they're doing.
Man, I tell you, if David had lived, it would have been interesting to see where his career went because, Kerry obviously was, the best built Von Erich, the, most WWF friendly Von Erich there would have been. And then, Kevin was good, but David was just such a great wrestler before the end, compared to the other two as, worker. Of course, there's always the message board, rumors of he was supposed to win the NWA title and all that. But it's sad that his life got cut so short because it would have been interesting to see And they said he was a much smarter businessman than the others. So, I mean, would world class maybe have lasted longer? Would there have been would things taken a different path? Would there not been so much tragedy had he lived?
I don't know.
I don't
There
know.
was
It's
just so
interesting
much
to
going
consider.
on. Yeah. David was, David was a drug user. I don't care what they say. He died of an OD. I heard it from day one. I was in the. Let me say, I don't know if I was in the business at the time. Not at all. I took photographs. There was people talking from the day he died, and then they kind of, Bruiser Brody threw it in the dope in the toilet.
Yeah.
I knew that. I knew that from almost the third or fourth week he died. That's what he died of. So you just don't know. I like David's work, but Kerry was always my favorite, I think. And Kerry's best matches were all against Flair. Lawler had a kind of a good match with him, but Flair could walk him through and go back to walking and talking someone through a great match. He could do that. There's a bunch of shit on here, and then we'll get to the end. We have a 2 out of 3 fall match with Flair and Rhodes. And so the first match, this was basic psychology too. This was Rhodes taking a lot of heat and just fighting back. He was doing hope spots and then cutting him off. He got the first fall, Flair won. That was a nasty sunset flip, too.
Yeah, that's about the only way you can put it.
He flipped him up and then landed where he looked like he might have been trying to have sex with Dusty on the side. He was like, What the hell happened there? In the second fall, tell us the finish of the second fall. Do you remember?
I don't remember. I only remember the third fall, which I described earlier.
All right. I'll let you do
I
the third
mistakenly
fall.
described the third fall for the titles change or whatever. But
Well, go ahead. I'll let you talk about the third fall. Second fall, Flair's in the middle of the ring. Dusty goes against the ropes and elbow smash. 1, 2, 3.
oh yes. I remember that now. Yeah,
But they did that was smart in the sense that it was a callback from earlier in the match. That's what I liked about it, is that Dusty tried to do it earlier in the match in some of those hope spots, and then Flair cut him off and moved out of the way. So it was a callback, which I like. Now let's go to the finish of the main event. Go ahead and tell me. Now, remember, Flair's beating on the leg the whole match.
Yeah, obviously, working up towards the figure four, because he rarely ever won anything but squash matches with figure four. But so Dusty, gets control, shoots him off. Flair's coming off the ropes. Dusty catches him with a body slam, which is kind of odd in and of itself. But of course, he gets him up for the body slam. The leg gives out. Slow 3 count. Which to me kind of, usually it's 1, 2, 3, but if 3 count was kind of slow, you kind of felt like even with a bad leg, damn, Dusty, why didn't you kick out there? But all that together, like I say, just kind of made it feel a little bit anticlimactic. But I guess I'm more used to all the, hot finishes from Memphis. Very rarely did you have. That's a clean finish, And usually, especially like in Crockett, in Crockett too, you can count on one hand how many times Flair ever went over clean. It was usually always the Horseman interfered or, some fluke where he kept his title. So to see him actually win clean, it felt odd. But not necessarily.
I think maybe that was, that's what they wanted in St. Louis. And they respected Flair. Even though they booed him, I think they respected him a lot. So I want to ask you, was it really that good?
Not really. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I know people hold St. Louis wrestling and Sam Mushnick in very high regard, and at the time, I'm sure it was great. But there's just some things that, from all we've been exposed to since, just doesn't hold up. And I just feel like that whole maybe there's 10 other DVDs to pick from, and maybe if we'd have picked one of the others, maybe it would have seemed a little different. But for me, watching that, it didn't really hold up. It wasn't really that good.
I gotta agree with you, brother. That was not fun watching, and I always pick a shitty one. There's some stuff, and as we talked, Flair was a star here. He really was a star of that whole. So Episode 10, or DVD number 10, guys. There's a lot of stuff to skip. If you're a Flair fan, go watch the Flair Roy Rogers match. I thought that was fun, and his interview. There are clips of 3 NWA title changes, which is also kind of fun, and looking at the finishes compared to now. But overall, I'll go with you. It really wasn't that good. Hey, G, thanks for joining me, man. Same bad time, same bad channel, folks, on the best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there! And as Gene knows, and just like Dusty said he gonna make it special for his mama. Well, I'm making it because I love my mama.
You gave me heat for watching Starrcade '86.